Hi, I'm Mary Ziegler. I'm going to give you a preview of a talk I'm going to be giving at the Petrie-Flom Center about parts of my book, Abortion and the Law in America. So in recent months, obviously, or recent weeks, actually, abortion has been front of mind for many with the nomination of Amy Coney Barrett. Coney Barrett, of course, is expected to give the court a kind of conservative supermajority, or at least a presumed one when it comes to abortion. And in the eyes of many, potentially create the probability that Roe will be overturned or at least significantly scaled back. And this, in part, I think, has catalyzed more concern or more of a sense that the Supreme Court, and in particular the Roe decision, are what have caused a lot of the polarization defining American abortion politics. Joan Williams in the New York Times. Here we have an editorial in Catholic magazine America. So my book takes issue with this narrative, in particular traces some of the ways in which the abortion debate in the decades after Roe has actually escalated, and for reasons having nothing to do with the court's decision. Indeed, in the decades following the court's decision, as you can imagine, many see the debate as being a kind of clash of absolutes, as Lawrence Tribe put it, between the right to life and the right to choose, and believe that Roe kind of elevated dialogue to a constitutional level by recognizing a right to privacy broad enough to encompass a woman's decision to end her pregnancy. But in many ways, the dialogue about abortion for decades has not turned on that kind of right to choose or right to life. It's instead turned on the real world consequences of abortion. So here, I'll talk a little bit more about how. So initially after Roe, abortion opponents focused on a constitutional amendment that would ban all abortions. But when that proposal seemed to be dead in the water, the movement instead turned to ways of limiting access to abortion and potentially securing new judges or justices on the Supreme Court. When this happened, of course, the movement had to develop new arguments because incremental abortion laws did nothing to actually prevent abortions or save fetal life. And so to justify these laws, abortion opponents instead focused on what they claimed to be the effects of abortion and abortion restrictions on the lives of real Americans. Here, for example, you have hearings about an incremental Akron ordinance that was first introduced in 1978 and became a model for the nation. There's a through line from this kind of debate through recent times, all the way up to the passage of the Partial Birth Abortion Ban Act, signed here by President George W. Bush in 2003. So as the debate increasingly turned on what abortion in America was really like, this, I argue, was an additional source of polarization because Americans on either side of the abortion divide increasingly disagreed about basic facts. And this continues to be true now. There's a breakdown in terms of where Americans on different sides of the abortion divide gather their information, whom they treat as experts, what kinds of media they rely on. And this has helped to fuel strategies involving everything from the idea that abortion pill-based abortions can be reversed to the idea that abortion causes an increased risk of breast cancer. And so I'm hoping to think about a few things in the presentation. Obviously, first, the history of how and why the debate got to this point, but also what it might mean for us going forward in abortion politics in terms of the prospect of a potential post-Roe America and the odds that polarization will either decrease or increase, in terms of what it means for the possible ways that Roe is unraveled by an increasingly conservative Supreme Court, and what it means too, I think, when we think about the role played by constitutionalization in creating polarization, and by extension, the role of the Supreme Court in creating polarization. So thanks for listening, and I hope you can join me at the workshop.